He was at a party with family and friends when, suddenly, a gang burst in, opening fire on the crowd. Many lives were lost, including those of his beloved family. The movie opens with three men hunting together in a dense forest. As they track their prey, Dale decides to break away from the group. Just as he spots his target and takes aim, a bald man suddenly emerges from the shadows, shoving Dale into a deep ravine before swiftly killing him. The attacker is Ryan Verrett, a former police officer consumed by vengeance after the brutal murder of his family years ago. Dale was one of the killers, and after taking him down, Ryan set off for a small town called Hope. This town was ruled by a ruthless motorcycle gang, so feared that even the sheriff dared not stand against them. Aware of the danger but undeterred, Ryan pressed on, driven by a clear purpose. Along the way, he stopped at a gas station to gather supplies and inquire about a place to stay. The innkeeper Kirby informed Ryan about the town's only motel, run by a young woman named Darcy. With most people avoiding Hope, her motel rarely saw guests. When Darcy met Ryan, she was visibly surprised by his audacity in venturing into such a dangerous town. However, Ryan remained unfazed, simply stating that he had unfinished business there. Meanwhile, FBI agent Frank was strategizing with his team to capture Dale, a ruthless murderer and dangerous rapist. As they spoke, another agent rushed into the room, reporting that Dale had been found dead. The scene then shifted to a haunting flashback from Ryan's past, back when he was still a police officer. In that tragic memory, he was celebrating at a party with his family and friends when a gang of criminals suddenly stormed in, unleashing a hail of bullets on the crowd. The air was filled with chaos and gunfire, claiming the lives of many, including Ryan's beloved family. Drake Santiago, the ruthless leader of the criminal gang, masterminded the brutal massacre as an act of revenge against the police officers who had once put him behind bars. Consumed by hatred, he set his sights on those officers and their families, determined to make them pay. Ryan, one of his intended victims, barely survived the onslaught, despite suffering a gunshot wound. Back in the present, Ryan cruised through the town's desolate streets when his eyes caught a row of motorcycles lined up in front of a building, immediately drawing his attention. A biker stormed out of the building, seething with anger as a nearby dog barked relentlessly at him. Enraged, he pulled out his gun, ready to silence the animal for good. But before he could squeeze the trigger, Ryan stepped in, swiftly disarming him and delivering a brutal beating. The commotion drew the attention of the other gang members inside. One by one, they spilled out onto the street, including their leader, Drake Santiago. However, Drake failed to recognize Ryan. Unsurprising considering the countless lives he had taken over the years. Despite Ryan's brutal takedown of one of his men, Drake chose to overlook it for the time being, as more urgent matters demanded his attention. However, Ryan's unexpected presence still piqued his suspicion. To keep an eye on him, Drake ordered his younger brother Rexo to secretly tail the bald stranger. The next morning, Rexo reported back with troubling news. A local club owner had refused to pay their protection fees. Infuriated, Drake decided to settle the issue in his own way. He challenged the club owner to a one-round boxing match, making a bold wager. If the man won, he would never have to pay protection money again. Despite his age, Drake remained a formidable fighter, effortlessly overpowering his much larger opponent in the boxing match. However, rather than finishing him off, Drake chose to show restraint. After all, dead men couldn't pay their debts. Protection money was just one stream of income for Drake and his gang. Their true wealth came from a variety of illegal ventures, including the operation of meth labs scattered throughout the region. Yet, even as he managed his criminal empire, Drake never let his guard down, keeping a close watch on the mysterious newcomer, Ryan. That evening, Rexo arrived at Darcy's motel, demanding to know if a bald man named Ryan was staying there. When Darcy refused to answer, his frustration quickly turned into anger, and he began making threats. He warned her that if she didn't reveal Ryan's whereabouts, he would make her life a living hell. Unbeknownst to Rexo, Ryan had overheard everything from inside the motel. Without hesitation, he stepped in and dealt with Rexo the only way he knew how, with force. After witnessing Rexo being taken down, Darcy's concern deepened. She anxiously warned Ryan that Rexo wasn't just any thug. He was the younger brother of Drake Santiago, the ruthless leader of the motorcycle gang that ruled the town with an iron fist. Drake would undoubtedly seek revenge if he learned his brother had been harmed, but Ryan was unfazed. Taking matters into his own hands, he dragged Rexo to the gang's drug lab, tied him to a car, and sent it barreling straight into the facility. Moments later, a massive explosion ripped through the building, reducing it to rubble and engulfing Rexo in flames. As the fire raged behind him, Ryan walked away, satisfied that his plan had played out perfectly. Before long, Drake and his gang arrived at the scene, their panic mounting as they took in the devastation before them. All they could do was stand helplessly as the raging flames devoured the lab. When they finally discovered Rexo's charred remains, Drake was consumed with fury, his grief quickly turning into a thirst for vengeance. Not long after the explosion, the sheriff and his deputy arrived to investigate. Drake and his gang were still lingering at the scene, their presence tense and hostile. Without hesitation, Drake approached the sheriff, his voice cold and menacing. He issued a chilling warning. If the sheriff dared to interfere with their operations, he would personally see to it that the man's entire family paid the price. The sheriff, too terrified to challenge Drake, remained silent. Deep down, he rationalized his inaction, convincing himself that turning a blind eye to the gang's activities might at least prevent even greater bloodshed in the town. The next day, Ryan set his sights on the gang's drug operation, targeting a truck transporting meth to another city. He tailed the vehicle from a distance, waiting for the right moment to strike. Once they were on an isolated stretch of road, he covertly punctured one of the tires, forcing the driver to pull over. The moment the man stepped out to inspect the damage, Ryan launched a brutal attack, slamming his head against the truck door with bone-crushing force. Wasting no time, he rigged the vehicle with explosives and walked away just as it erupted into a fiery explosion. A gang member witnessed the explosion and wasted no time reporting it to Drake. The moment Drake learned that the destroyed truck had been carrying a massive shipment of meth, his fury erupted. He had just lost an enormous fortune. Seething with rage, he was determined to hunt down whoever was responsible, and his suspicions quickly fell on Ryan. Eager to confirm his theory, Drake ordered his men to track down Kirby and bring him to the gang's hideout. Once there, Drake confronted the innkeeper, demanding his cooperation in uncovering Ryan's true identity and exposing his motives. If Ryan was behind the attack, Drake wouldn't think twice about killing him. Terrified and left with no other option, Kirby unwillingly agreed to do as he was told. Later that day, Kirby began his investigation. He discreetly searched Ryan's car, which was parked near the motel, hoping to uncover any clues about his past. However, just as he was rummaging through the vehicle, Ryan suddenly emerged from the motel and caught him red-handed. Tension filled the air. But Kirby quickly masked his nerves and casually invited Ryan over to his house for a drink, claiming it was just a short walk from the motel. Ryan, however, was not so easily fooled. The moment they stepped into Kirby's house, he wasted no time and directly confronted him about searching his car. Cornered and under pressure, Kirby confessed that Drake had ordered him to dig into Ryan's background. Before they could continue the conversation, the roar of a motorcycle echoed outside, followed by the abrupt stop of an engine. A moment later, one of Drake's enforcers, a thug known as Crab, barged in, challenging Ryan to a fight. Despite Crab's size and strength, the battle was short-lived. Ryan swiftly overpowered him with ease, yet, instead of delivering a final blow, he chose to let Crab go, a decision that would have consequences later. Meanwhile, Drake continued his investigation, determined to uncover Ryan's true identity. During a private conversation with the police chief, he finally got the answer he was looking for. Ryan wasn't just some ordinary man passing through town. He was a former police officer who had walked away from the force after his family was brutally murdered. Satisfied with this crucial piece of information, Drake handed the police chief a wad of cash as a token of appreciation. However, his business for the night wasn't over yet. Under the cover of darkness, Drake and his men made their way to Kirby's house while he lay fast asleep, completely unaware of the danger closing in. When Drake learned that Kirby had failed to uncover any useful information about Ryan, his disappointment quickly turned to anger. As punishment, he ordered Crab, one of his most ruthless enforcers, to deal with Kirby permanently. The next morning, Ryan discovered Kirby's lifeless body. Once he confirmed that Drake's gang was responsible, he knew there was no point in holding back any longer. Wasting no time, he stormed into one of Drake's clubs and single-handedly took down every gang member inside with ruthless efficiency. Ryan then abducted Crab, stuffed him into the trunk of his car, and executed him without hesitation. As a chilling message to Drake, he dumped Crab's body right in front of the gang's headquarters. When Drake discovered that one of his most trusted enforcers had been killed, his fury knew no bounds. He immediately summoned every remaining member of his gang, ordering them to arm themselves and prepare for an all-out manhunt to eliminate Ryan at any cost. That night, at the inn, Darcy was startled by strange noises outside. Instinctively, she rose from her chair, grabbed her handgun, and braced herself for an intruder. However, Ryan quickly realized that their enemies had arrived and urgently instructed Darcy to take cover behind the front desk before the situation turned deadly. A few minutes later, the front door creaked open, and Drake's men cautiously stepped inside. Ryan remained perfectly still, waiting for them to move closer. The moment they were within range, he gave Darcy a silent signal to cut the lights. Darkness swallowed the room, and within seconds, gunfire erupted like a violent storm. The deafening echoes filled the air until sudden silence followed. When Darcy switched the lights back on, she was stunned. Every gang member lay lifeless on the floor. Scathed, Ryan knew the inn was no longer safe. Without wasting a moment, he grabbed Darcy and swiftly led her away, determined to find a more secure hiding place. Fortunately, Ryan failed to notice the enemies lying in wait outside. The moment he stepped out, they ambushed him, striking with relentless force until he lost consciousness. When he came to, Ryan found himself bound and restrained inside the gang's headquarters, with Darcy captured alongside him. His arms were tightly secured to a chair, leaving him completely immobilized. Drake stood before him, his eyes filled with cold malice. With a chilling smirk, he declared that both Ryan and Darcy would die, but not before he made Ryan watch as Darcy was brutally tortured. Drake commanded one of his men to torture Ryan before stepping into the next room. To the enforcer, a towering brute relished the order and began mercilessly pummeling Ryan. However, in a sudden turn of events, Ryan managed to loosen the ropes binding his hands. With lightning speed, he struck back, catching his attacker off guard. A brutal struggle ensued, but Ryan swiftly overpowered the man, knocking him unconscious. Wasting no time, he navigated through the ship, the gang's makeshift headquarters, determined to finish what he had started. Ryan fought his way through Drake's men, who attempted to resist but were no match for his skill and ferocity. One by one, they fell until none remained standing. At last, he found Darcy bound and gagged, her eyes filled with fear. Wasting no time, he freed her, and together they searched for an escape route from the ship. However, Ryan knew Drake wouldn't let them go that easily. Sensing that the final confrontation was inevitable, Ryan turned to Darcy and told her to leave. This was his fight, and he was ready to face Drake alone. Before the fight began, Drake smirked coldly and admitted that he finally remembered Ryan, the cop, whose family he had slaughtered. He had assumed Ryan hadn't survived that night. The battle erupted into a brutal clash. Drake relied on his raw strength, but Ryan's skill and precision gave him the upper hand. Blow after blow, Ryan overpowered his enemy until Drake collapsed to the ground. Just as Ryan thought it was over, Drake, bloodied but not broken, staggered back. With a desperate glare, he seized a knife and lunged at Ryan from behind. Just as Drake was about to strike, FBI agent Frank arrived, and fatal shot, ending Drake's reign of terror before he could harm Ryan. With their ruthless leader dead, the FBI saw this as their opportunity to finally dismantle the gang and free the town from its grip. Frank chose not to arrest Ryan, believing that men like him still had a role to play in the fight against crime. Before leaving town, Ryan exchanged a knowing glance with Frank and promised that their paths would cross again. The takeaway from this story? If you're going to take on an entire criminal empire, it helps to be a former cop with nothing to lose, a relentless thirst for revenge, and a knack for turning explosions into your calling card.